Finish your second part of the lecture for Dr. Rosario's lecture about thyroidology. So on my end, I'll be talking about the general endocrinology. So usually general endocrinology covers your pituitary glands, your adrenals, your reproductive endo, and usually the calcium and phosphate metabolism. But because of the limited time that we have right now, and we have to narrow down the topics that you must know as a medical student, as a general physician. So it will be narrowed down to 4 topics. So we will be talking about adrenal insufficiency, Cushing syndrome, which we already talked about last week for the pituitary, osteoporosis, and PCOS. Again, I'm Dr. Labajo Paguduan, internist and endocrinologist. So we know that Cushing's syndrome, based from our previous lecture, is a constellation of clinical features that result from chronic exposure to excess glucocorticoids of any etiology. So we'll be talking about the ACTH independent. No, pag ACTH independent, yan yung adrenal. No, so you would expect that the lab result of an ACTH-independent adrenal etiology will be high ACTH, low ACTH, high cortisol level. Okay? Because the adrenal gland is not responding. So the chronic stimulation, despite the high cortisol level, the ACTH dependent is not, remains to be low or inappropriately normal. So Cushing's disease refers to Cushing syndrome, which caused by pituitary. So pag pituitary, Cushing's disease. Pag Cushing's syndrome, iatrogenic, ectopic, or adrenal. Overall, the most common cause of Cushing syndrome is the use of glucocorticoids for immunosuppression or for the treatment of inflammatory disorders. The incidence is 1:2 per 100,000 per population per year. So these are the causes of Cushing syndrome. We'll focus on the ACTH independent. So the ACTH independent consists of about 10% of the total number of etiology of Cushing syndrome. And if you break it down, the most common cause of ACTH-independent Cushing's is adrenocortical adenoma, 5 to 10%, followed by adrenocortical carcinoma, 1%. And these are the rare causes, no? Macronodular adrenal hyperplasia, primary nodular adrenal disease, micro or macronodular, and McCune-Albright syndrome, which is about less than 1%. So it is more common in females. So we know this already. So the high discriminatory index, signs and symptoms, meaning it's very particular that this is, if you see this signs and symptoms, this is very particular for Cushing syndrome. So usually yung skin, may skin plethora or flushing of the cheeks, red cheeks, thin and brittle skin, easy bruising, broad and purple stretch marks, acne, and hirsutism. And then for the muscle, usually, ang itsura nila, they have central obesity. They have a large waist circumference, no, as seen in the picture, and then thin yung legs nila. So commonly, because of this, they have weakness, proximal myopathy, prominent atrophy of gluteal and upper leg muscles with difficulty climbing stairs or getting up from a chair. This is very particular, the proximal myopathy. So that's why if you see a patient with this PASI, no, buffalo hump, meron silang facial plethora, moon PASI, central obesity, you ask for these symptoms and it can be help you detect patients and screen them early. So these are the sample of your purplish striae, no, wide sila, usually seen in the abdominal area, easy bruisability, and then these are your also seen hyperpigmentation, lalo na kung ACTH dependent. So this is the algorithm for management of patients with suspected Cushing syndromes. We talked about this. So if you have clinical suspicion of Cushing's, the screening or confirmatory test you can request for is your 24-hour urinary-free cortisol, the norm, if it's 3 times above the normal, so high index of suspicion, then you proceed with the confirmatory test. And then this one is the commonly used, no, the low dose dexamethasone suppression test. You give your 1 milligram dexamethasone at 11 p.m., then you extract the cortisol at 8 to 9 a.m. And if the cortisol is more than 15 nanomole per liter, so positive yon. And then you request for your midnight plasma salivary. Salivary cortisol usually is what we request for, but also plasma can be used. And then, if further confirmation is needed or desired, you can do your high-dose dexamethasone suppression test. So we go to the right side kasi we're talking about the ACTH-independent Cushing's. So if, for example, mag-positive sila dun sa screening test natin, dun sa low-dose dexamethasone suppression test, you request for your ACTH to differ if it's ACTH-independent or dependent. So if the ACTH is low, less than 5 picogram per ml, so ACTH independent, you request for unenhanced CT adrenals. And then, with adrenal CT scan, you will be able to identify if it's a bilateral or unilateral adrenal mass. If it's bilateral, micronodular or macronodular adrenal hyperplasia, you do your bilateral adrenalectomy. If it's unilateral, you do for adrenal tumor workup, meaning you work up for other hypersecretion of the adrenal glands, such as for screening for pheochromocytoma and for hyperaldosteronism. So you request for your 24-hour urinary metanephrines or plasma metanephrines for your pheochromocytoma. And then for hyperaldosteronism, you request for your plasma renin and your serum aldosterone. So if you identify already, once you've worked up the other hormones, you do your unilateral adrenalectomy. Okay? So the management of Cushing syndrome, again, kung pituitary ang etiology, you do your transsphenoidal surgery. And then if it's primary adrenal, you do your unilateral adrenalectomy. If bilateral, ideally, bilateral adrenalectomy. If iatrogenic, you discontinue the steroids, but you have to titrate it slowly. Lalo na if they, di ba, I talked about this, if it's more than 2 weeks na prednisone 20 milligrams, you have to titrate down the dose slowly because you want the HPA axis of the adrenal from steroidogenesis to recover. So you have to titrate it slowly and you cannot discontinue it right away because they will suffer from adrenal insufficiency. Kung ectopic, meaning underlying malignancy, you resect the tumor. Again, if disease, Cushing's disease, transsphenoidal. So overt Cushing's is associated with poor prognosis if left untreated. That's why it's very important for you to intervene. And there are a lot of metabolic problems associated with it, and most common na cause of exit nila is cardiovascular and infection. So let's now proceed with adrenal insufficiency. Kung sobra naman, doon naman tayo sa kulang. So usually, ang most common cause of your adrenal insufficiency is hypothalamic pituitary origin. Usually, this happens after post-op, post-surgical adrenal insufficiency, ang tinatawag nating secondary adrenal insufficiency. Or for example, may tumor, may TB. I think we briefly mentioned this in the previous lecture in pituitary. Pag primary adrenal insufficiency, it's less common. So kung hypothalamic, 3 is to 10,000. Kapag primary adrenal insufficiency naman, 2 is to 10,000. The suppression of the HPA axis is secondary to exogenous glucocorticoid treatment is much more common. So ito yung sinasabi ko na if they've been taking steroids for a long time, meaning prednisone of 20 milligrams or more of more than 2 weeks, so masusuppress na yung HPA axis mo. So pag tinanggal mo yung steroids at that time, magka-adrenal insufficiency or acute adrenal insufficiency yung patient. So acute AI. So I'll use the word AI, the shortcut for adrenal insufficiency. Mag-acute adrenal AI or adrenal crisis sila because of the sudden withdrawal. Because for such a long time, they're so used to the exogenous steroids that if you remove it, the adrenal gland will not be able to adjust or produce right away on its own. So primary adrenal insufficiency is most commonly caused by autoimmune adrenalitis, 30 to 40% isolated, 60 to 70% autoimmune polyglandular syndrome. That's why it's also very important that if identified that the patient is primary adrenal insufficiency, you screen also for other autoimmune diseases such as thyroid, check also the sugars, no, type 1, no? Okay. Can be seen in Harrison's. These are the different types of causes of primary adrenal insufficiency and the gene related. So hindi ko naman tatanungin na sa inyo yung specific gene. But I think you have to take note of this kasi for the exam, from the board exam, sometimes they ask, no? Um, just take note that with bilateral adrenalectomy, the treatment for bilateral adrenal hyperplasia, of course, will cause primary adrenal insufficiency. So for these are the common signs and symptoms. So when to suspect. So if they are complaining of fatigue, lack of energy, parang nauupos na kandila, yan yung mga lagi ko tinatanong sa patients ko. Weight loss, anorexia, pwede sila din mag-present with fever, joint pains, myalgia, normochromic, take note of this, normochromic anemia, lymphocytosis, and eosinophilia could be the hematologic changes seen in AI. So, slight increase in TSH nila due to loss of feedback inhibition ng TSH release because of the high cortisol level. Hypogly, kasi more frequent in children, low blood pressure or postural hypotension, and hyponatremia due to loss of feedback inhibition of your ABP or vasopressin release. So, if primary adrenal insufficiency, ang very common actually is abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. So dizziness, postural hypotension, salt craving, low blood pressure, increased creatinine due to volume depletion, hyponatremia, hyperkalemia. Pero kung adrenal androgen deficiency naman, lack of energy, loss of libido, loss of axillary and pubic hair in women, kasi nga may androgen deficiency. Other signs and symptoms, remember, kung primary adrenal insufficiency yan, meaning low cortisol, there will be presence of your high ECTH. High ECTH, kasi remember, di ba, negative feedback inhibition kasi yan, di ba, sa endocrinology. So, for example, kung ang primary problem is your adrenal gland, so sa baba ang problem, they cannot produce your cortisol, may insufficiency, so low ang cortisol. So, a normal response ng pituitary, dahil intact ang pituitary mo, high ang ECTH, para sasabihin niya down the line with the high ECTH, it will stimulate supposedly your adrenal gland to produce more cortisol. But if the adrenal gland, there will be persistently high ECTH and low cortisol level. So, or inappropriately normal yung ECTH nila, tapos or high ECTH in the presence of low cortisol level. So, dahil sa high ECTH, they commonly present with hyperpigmentation due to excess pro-opiomelanocortin-derived peptides. And for secondary adrenal insufficiency, alabaster-colored pale skin. But I want you to take note of the hyperpigmentation kasi dun mo ma-differentiate, lalo na kung yung mga workups mo, kasi baka kala mo acanthosis nigricans, yun pala, hyperpigmentation secondary to AI na pala siya. So you have to put into consideration yung mga other symptoms, no, para malaman mo when to screen for AI. So if you have clinical suspicion of AI, hyperpigmentation, for lalo na kung primary adrenal insufficiency, iniisip mo, postural hypotension, hyponatremia, may weight loss, fatigue, or fever, screening for AI for diagnosis is you do your cosintropin test. So you check for the plasma cortisol 30 to 60 minutes after the 250 microgram cosintropin IM or IV. So dapat tataas kasi yan, 'di ba? Kasi pag nagbigay ka ng cosintropin, your ECTH stimulation test, yun eh. ECTH and cosintropin is the same. So pag nag-ECTH stimulation test ka, pag nagbigay ka, dapat 'di ba tataas ang cortisol mo. Pero kung cortisol mo post-cosintropin is less than 450 to 500 nanomole per liter, ibig sabihin meron kang primary adrenal insufficiency. So also check for the CBC, sodium, potassium, CREA, urea in your TSH. Differential diagnosis, you request for your plasma ECTH, plasma renin, and serum aldosterone. Kung primary adrenal, high ECTH, high renin, low aldosterone. So baka mixed siya ng glucocorticoid and mineralocorticoid replacement. You check for adrenal autoantibodies. So doon na tayo kasi masyado ng technical sa inyo to. So you check kasi baka may mga other autoimmune polyglandular syndrome kasi sila. And then kung secondary naman yan, kung meaning pituitary, low to normal ACTH, normal renin, normal aldosterone, glucocorticoid replacement na agad, you check for the pituitary. No, kung positive, baka may mass lesion. Kung negative, you check for the history of exogenous steroid use, head trauma, or consider isolated ACTH deficiency. So the management of acute AI, ito yung adrenal crisis, immediate initiation of rehydration kasi volume contracted sila. Usually carried by saline infusion of initial rate of 1 liter and with continuous cardiac monitor. So the standard of treatment for acute AI is hydrocortisone, you give 100 milligrams, and then you give the 200 milligrams over 24 hours. Either you give it at 50 milligram Q6 or over IV infusion for 200 milligram within 24 hours. So higher doses of hydrocortisone provide sufficient stimulation of your mineralocorticoid. So the mineralocorticoid replacement can be initiated once the daily hydrocortisone dose has been reduced to 50 milligrams. So kung kailangan pa talaga, no, kung persistently na low ang sodium, ganyan, no, hypotensive. So you may give your mineralocorticoid replacement. But otherwise, usually ang ano naman yan, hydrocortisone talaga. We give our short acting. So management naman ng chronic adrenal insufficiency, those that replaces the physiologic daily cortisol production. So makikita nyo dito, the usual cortisol circadian rhythm, mababa siya sa madaling araw. It increases between 7 to 8, 7 to 9. Kung makikita mo, the highest is around 8, no? Kaya mapapansin nyo, yung mga remember yung low dose dexamethasone suppression test, you request it at the time ng peak ng cortisol level, usually at 8 to 9. And then, lowest, usually bumababa yan in the afternoon, and then as you go to sleep. So usually, baliktaran sila ng melatonin, our sleep hormone, no, lowest during the day, highest during the night. So ang cortisol naman, highest in the morning, lowest at night. So yun yung sinasabi natin physiologic daily cortisol production. So yung oral administration of 15 to 25 milligram hydrocortisone in 2 to 3 divided doses. Yan yung dapat na corticosteroid replacement. Remember, in pregnancy, they may require increased hydrocortisone dose by 50 milligram during the last trimester because you're anticipating the delivery, higher ang stress level. In all patients, at least half of the daily dose is administered in the morning. If, for example, you're giving it at 2 divided doses, the hydrocortisone, 2/3 in the morning, 1/3 in the evening to mimic your cortisol circadian rhythm. If you're giving it at 3 divided doses, half sa umaga, sa morning, and then 1/4 sa lunch, 1/4 sa dinner. So long-acting glucocorticoids such as your dexamethasone and prednisolone is not recommended because of the continuous glucocorticoid receptor stimulation, and you're not mimicking the cortisol less likely to mimic the cortisol circadian rhythm kasi persistently high siya during the day. Hindi katulad ng hydrocortisone na short-acting lang siya. Kaya ideal siya for mimicking the cortisol circadian rhythm. Remember this equipotency, no? Kasi for example, hindi kasi available ang hydrocortisone tablet readily here in the Philippines. So remember that in 1 milligram hydrocortisone, there's 1.6 milligram cortisone, 0.2 milligram prednisolone, 0.25 prednisone, and 0.025 dexamethasone. This is very helpful if you're kasi common yung binibigay namin actually in private practice is prednisone actually. No, so you just convert the hydrocortisone to the prednisone dosing if not available ang hydrocortisone tablets. So management, so clinic, you don't need to repeat your ACTH or serum cortisol because it varies during the day, no? So how do you monitor your treatment? You check for clinical signs and symptoms for monitoring of replacement therapy. So for isolated primary adrenal insufficiency, screen for other autoimmune diseases, like I said earlier, no? And then you have to prime women with primary adrenal insufficiency that there is a possibility of premature ovarian failure because of the autoimmune aspect of it. So supraphysiologic glucocorticoid treatment with doses of 30 milligram hydrocortisone or more will affect your bone metabolism. Remember, in Cushing's syndrome, it causes osteoporosis. Same goes with patients taking chronic steroids. You have to screen these patients for osteoporosis, and regular bone mineral density evaluation is required. Tatandaan nyo, for patients who are on steroid replacement because of AI, you have to advise them sick day rule. For example, there will be they have cough, colds, fever, flu-like symptoms. They need to double the dose of their oral glucocorticoids to keep up with the stress. Otherwise, acute adrenal insufficiency or adrenal crisis yung patient. So pag adrenal crisis, IV yan, admission talaga yan, hydration, hydrocortisone IV, and then you monitor them clinically. So let us now proceed with osteoporosis. So I'll try to mabilis lang naman tong lecture kasi we're down to 2 more. So ito yung medyo mas mahaba lang ng konti. So for the osteoporosis, must know to, no, it remains to be underdiagnosed worldwide. So we diagnose osteoporosis using the bone densitometry scan. We'll be talking about that later. But based on the bone densitometry, the bone density that falls 2.5 standard deviation below the mean score for young, healthy adults of the same sex and race, also referred to as T-score of less than 2.5, or below, meaning more negative, diagnosis of osteoporosis. This is prevalent among the postmenopausal women, but also occurs in both women and women as a function of age and with underlying conditions or major risk factors associated with bone demineralization. So the risk factors that lead to fracture are aging, menopause because of the low estrogen and progesterone. And remember that estrogen and progesterone is protective to the bones actually. And other risk factors such as smoking, malnutrition, there will be increased bone loss leading to low bone density. If you have high propensity to fall, leading to fracture, once you have had a fracture, whether osteoporotic or hindi, you're at risk for another fracture. So poor bone quality and low peak bone mass, all boils down to low bone density. So yung mga non-modifiable risk factor for osteoporosis fracture, no, is personal history of fracture as an adult, history of fracture in the first degree relative. That's why you also need to ask, very important yung past family history, female gender, advanced age, white race, and dementia. For potentially modifiable, current cigarette smoking, estrogen deficiency. So these are patients with early menopause, less than 45 years old, or nagkaroon sila ng post-surgical menopause, bilateral ovariectomy, prolonged premenstrual amenorrhea, more than 1 year, kasi nga walang protective benefit of the female hormones, Poor nutrition, low calcium, vitamin D intake, alcoholism, impaired eyesight due to adequate correction, so high propensity for fall, recurrent falls, inadequate physical activity, so yung balance, no, and poor health or frailty. So when we talk about osteoporosis-related fractures, these are adulthood fractures of any bone that occur in the setting of trauma less than or equal to fall from a standing height with exception of fingers, toes, face, and skull. So ibig sabihin kung yung patient mo nahulog from, meron yan 'di ba, maririnig niyo yan na kaupo sa toilet biglang nahulog or from paupo sila tapos paupo sila hindi may isang patient paupo siya, hindi niya nahawakan or natantya yung pag-upo niya na nahulog siya sa floor, nag-hip fracture afterwards. So these are osteoporosis-related fracture. From a standing height, nag-fracture sila. Dapat kasi hindi. In a patient with no problem with their bone density. More frequently, in increasing age as bone density loss progress, in women, loss of ovarian function at menopause, typically around 50, precipitates rapid bone loss. Among individuals more than 50 years old, any fracture except fingers, toes, face, and skull should be considered a potentially related osteoporosis regardless of specific circumstance of the fracture. So kung magtataka kayo bakit nag-fracture na ganung height lang, no? Except for the specified locations, you suspect a osteoporosis-related fracture. So fractures themselves, sabi ko nga, are risk factor for future fractures, highest risk within the first 2 years after the first fracture. Kaya very important dito yung treatment. So remember, hindi ko na to isa-isahin. There's a good, you can, di ba may access kayo sa, ano nga to, hanapin ko yung video, I'll send it sa Canvas. There is a good of visual representation or visual of how yung bone how the bone recovers. Usually kasi we have micro fractures every day with our daily activities, but in a normal individual, our bone mineral unit has a way of repairing those microfractures. But if you have problems, no, halimbawa may mga secondary osteoporosis or with age, no, postmenopausal, yung microfractures na yun, hindi na siya nare-repair and there's progressive resorption of our bone leading to the decrease in bone mineral density, leading to bone loss due to age-related changes in bone remodeling and extrinsic and intrinsic factors that exaggerate this process. Kasi dapat, there will be bone resorption, then bone remodeling. But there is continuous resorption, there's an imbalance between this process leading to the low peak bone mass and leading eventually to osteoporosis. So our bone remodeling has two primary functions: to repair micro damage within the skeleton, to maintain skeletal strength and ensure the relative youth of the skeleton, and to supply calcium when needed for the skeleton to maintain serum calcium. So this one, I want you to read on this, na kay Harrison's naman to. These are the disease associated with increased risk of general osteoporosis in adults. So ito yung mga secondary causes. Mapapansin niyo dyan yung hypogonadal state because of the lack of your estrogen progesterone. And then for the endocrine disorder, the Cushing's, no, because it increases bone osteoclastic activity, leading to osteoporosis. And ito yung mga i-work up ninyo if you're thinking secondary osteoporosis. No, kung halimbawa hindi naman menopause yung patient mo or lalaki siya na more than 50 years old, ito yung mga i-request mo, no, for request for workup for hyperpara, hyperthyroidism, diabetes, whether type 1 or 2, acromegaly, adrenal insufficiency could also cause your osteoporosis. And this down the line, no, makikita nyo marami. Actually, mga autoimmune diseases din, isa yan sa mga indication. And I want you to read on this, not just for the purpose of exam, no? Sa board exam, tatanungin din yan. But also in the future, when you do when you practice, whether kung nasa IM ka man or nasa geriatrics, no? At least you know what are the secondary causes of osteoporosis. So ito yung mga drugs associated naman with increased risk of generalized osteoporosis. Kaya kanina 'di ba sa AI lecture, if the patient has been taking chronic steroid use, you have to screen for bone mineral density. Cyclosporin, cytotoxic drugs, anticonvulsants, aromatase inhibitors sa chemo, 'di ba? For breast CA and SSRIs, excessive thyroxine, yung levothyroxine natin, aluminum, gonadotropin releasing hormone agonist, heparin, lithium, proton pump inhibitors if given in prolonged period of time, ha? Thiazolidinediones, no, yung pioglitazone, and androgen deprivation therapies, yung mga bicalutamide, treatment for prostate cancer. So this is what we use for diagnosis of measurement of bone mass. Ang common na ginagamit is your dual energy X-ray absorptiometry, but less common na tong mga others, no? So standard na yung DEXA scan. Yan yung tinatawag nating DEXA scan or bone densitometry. So in DEXA, bone mineral density, the normal bone density range is from -1 to +1. Osteopenia, below average if it's less than mga -2 to -2.4. Pero pag 2.5, tatandaan niyo yung mga number na yan, -2.5 below, more negative, this is osteoporosis range. So T-score, pag sinabi nating T-score, it tells the patient what their bone mineral density is in comparison with a young adult. So, mga 70-year-old female lang nagpaano, i-compare siya in a 25-year-old na T-score of the same gender with peak bone mineral density. Ang Z-score naman is a comparison of what a patient's bone mineral density is in comparison to the average bone mineral density of a male or female of their age and weight. So usually T-score ang ginagamit sa mga elderly na patient, sa mga postmenopausal. Z-score is usually what we use for males and premenopausal women. So this is a very helpful tool, no, yung FRAX, the Fracture Risk Assessment Tool, because it helps us compute the chances of a 10-year probability fracture. But actually sa FRAX kasi meron diyang part na you have to input the bone mineral density, but hindi siya requirement. So ibig sabihin, if you put in the questionnaire, the age of the patient, so between 40 to 90 lang yung ina-accept nila, yung sex, weight, height, previous fracture, parent fracture hip, meaning kung history ng first degree relative na fracture, current smoking, glucocorticoid use, rheumatoid arthritis, secondary osteoporosis, for example, may Cushing sila, and alcohol of 3 or more units per day, kahit yan lang ang input mo, mako-compute niya na yung percentage of major osteoporotic and hip fracture. So that's very important kasi it will tell us when to start treatment and to request for bone mineral density, no? So this is the screening. Very important kasi 'di ba sabi ko sa inyo, it remains to be underdiagnosed, no? Kasi hindi naman by the time may mga patients na by the time malaman mo na may osteoporosis sila, na-fracture na sila. But the goal is hindi dapat sila magkaroon ng fracture. So when do we indicate BMD testing? So take note of this kasi this is very important. So for women ages more than 65 years old and above, men ages 70 years old and above, regardless of the clinical risk factor. So standard yan, dapat pag 65 and above na yung babae or 70 na yung lalaki, screen. Then younger, postmenopausal women or women in menopausal transition, and men aged from 50 to 69 with clinical risk factors for fracture. Yung mga minention natin earlier, no? Malnutrition, smoking, rheumatoid arthritis, di ba? So adults who have fracture at or after age 50, you do your, especially kung ang fracture nila is from a standing height. Pero osteoporotic related fracture na yun eh, di ba? So adults with conditions such as RA, rheumatoid arthritis, or taking medications such as glucocorticoids at a daily dose of 5 mg prednisone or equivalent to more than 3 months associated with low bone mass or bone loss. So take note of this. So glucocorticoids of more than 5 mg prednisone. So usually yan kasi yung dosing ng steroid replacement sa AI, chronic AI. So more than 5 mg prednisone. Tapos, di ba, you give it for more than 3 months kasi nga, ano na yan eh, part of their replacement yan eh. So maintenance na, you screen for low bone mass or bone loss. So, osteoporosis treatment pyramid. So, highest, ang nasa baseline, nasa baba ng pyramid is non-pharmacologic general measure. So, always tell the patient, low impact exercises, consumption of, they need to remove the use of consumption of alcohol, tobacco, and their diet, no, calcium rich dapat. No? Second is prevention of falls. So you always tell them that when they don't walk at night. Sa CR, very important na meron silang handles and meron silang anti-slip mats inside the CR, adequate calcium and vitamin D intake, and the medical treatment. So the preferred source of calcium is diet. But many patients require calcium to bring supplementation to bring the intake to 1,200 milligram per day. Tapos, ang vitamin daily intake of an adult is 200 IU, if less than 50, 400 kapag 50 to 70, and 600 IU for more than 70 years old. So, weight-bearing exercises and also low impact helps prevent bone loss and improves neuromuscular function. Kaya nga nowadays, di ba, they are encouraging adults, yung mga elderly patients, women, no, to do weight-bearing exercises. It helps prevent bone loss and improves the neuromuscular function. Not just for women, but also for men. So these are the overview of FDA-approved medications of osteoporosis. Bisphosphonates, no? These are your alendronate, ebandronate, risedronate, and zoledronic acid. So it varies. For example, ang alendronate, usually this is given, ang common na binibigay dito is 70 mg once weekly. If you want prevention, they give it 35 mg once weekly. But for the purpose of this discussion, treatment of osteoporosis tayo, 70 mg once weekly. This is orally taken. Bisphosphonates, oral bisphosphonates are given for 5 years, then they go into drug holiday. So, ang mga common na side effects ng bisphosphonate is things that you need to watch out for is a typical fracture of the femur, and also the osteonecrosis of the jaw. Okay? So, ang common na side effect is dyspepsia, abdominal pain, musculoskeletal pain. For IV, zoledronic acid, 5 mg once a year lang siya for 3 years. Ang common na side effect is acute reaction, flu-like symptoms, fever, myalgia. It occurs within 3 days of infusion. And they could also present with hypotension. So, very important that you monitor them frequently. And then for calcitonin, this is a nasal spray, no? Usually, give it 200 IU in one nostril, alternating each day, usually for 1 month. 1 month lang talaga to, lalo na pag may bone pains yung patient. Pero this is not available in the Philippines. So, ang selective estrogen receptor modulator, usually given to sa mga, ideal to sa mga patients who are still close to the menopause, mga within 2 to 3 years after their menopause, no, raloxifene, 60 mg once weekly. Pero dahil hormone siya, high risk for VTE, arthralgia, leg cramps, flu syndrome. And then, the parathyroid hormone analog is the teriparatide. You give it 20 microgram once daily. So, ang common na side effect dyan is transient hypercalcemia, nausea, rhinitis, arthralgia, and pain. So, injectable siya. You give it once a day, every day for 2 years. And then for the monoclonal antibody, your denosumab Prolia, you give it 60 mg every 6 months for 5 to 10 years. Depends actually on the bone densitometry. So, ang common na side effect ng denosumab dahil monoclonal antibody siya, dermatitis, rash, mild bone and muscle pain, and UTI. So, dito, clarification lang, di ba sa teriparatide, baka ma-confuse kayo kasi parathyroid hormone analog. Di ba, ang hyperparathyroidism can cause osteoporosis. So, bakit ang parathyroid hormone is used as a treatment? This is actually an anabolic medication for osteoporosis. Because when you give it at a lower dose, kasi 'di ba supraphysiologic kasi sa hyperparathyroidism eh. So if you give it at 20 microgram, this is low dose for a prolonged period of time, there will be increased bone remodeling and less resorption. Kaya siya ginagamit as treatment. So again, treatment of osteoporosis, dami ko sinabi, but I'll reiterate this. So for bisphosphonate, ang role niya is impairs osteoclast function and reduce osteoclast number, in part by inducing apoptosis, hence promotes bone remodeling. So some bisphosphonates have very long retention in the skeleton and may exert long-term effects. That's why they're taken may once a week lang siya, 'di ba? Meron nga isa, ibandronate is given once a month, and then hanggang 5 years lang, and then you go into drug holiday. So yung SERM natin, it reduces bone turnover and bone loss in postmenopausal women. Calcitonin, it suppresses your osteoclast activity by direct action on the osteoclast calcitonin receptor. And then for the denosumab, this is a fully monoclonal antibody to the rank ligand, the final common denominator effector of your osteoclast formation, activity, and survival. So, binoblock niya yon. So, it inhibits its ability to initiate formation of mature osteoclast that increases bone resorption from osteoclast precursors and bring mature osteoclast to the bone surface and initiate bone resorption. So again, yung teriparatide, this is exogenously given with direct action to the osteoblast activity, leading to de novo bone formation early in response to PTH before activation of bone resorption. Appears to be favor bone formation over bone resorption, and it is given daily to stimulate osteoblast recruitment and activity through the activation of the WNT signaling. And unlike all other treatment, it produces true, take note of this, true increase in bone tissue, hence it's called an anabolic treatment, and apparent restoration of bone microarchitecture. Kaya binibigay siya yung recommended for severe osteoporosis and for yung mga high risk fractures. Okay? So take note pala, hindi ko kasi nasama, basta pag tandaan nyo, with denosumab, bisphosphonate, you watch out for atypical fracture of the femur and also osteonecrosis of the jaw as part of the uncommon side effect to the medication. Kasi kailangan mo din i-educate yung patients mo for that. Kaya usually, yung mga patients na sinastartan on bisphosphonate, denosumab, kailangan magpa-dental clearance muna sila. So for the reproductive endo, I specifically chose PCOS kasi very common siya but remains to be underdiagnosed. And actually, ito yung meron talagang metabolic related metabolic problems from reproductive gynecology to internal medicine. So let's talk about the polycystic ovarian syndrome. So what happens in polycystic ovarian syndrome? There is increase in your GnRH pulsatility, no? Because of this, it increases your luteinizing hormone secretion. So if increase your LH mo, there will be androgen excess. Because of the increased androgen production, decrease in your sex hormone binding globulin, it leads to the multiple metabolic problems, and not just also leading to problems in your menstrual cycle, no, na disturb yung folliculogenesis. There's also increase in your theca cell androgen production. So because of this androgen production, it also leads to your there's in PCOS, there is a level of insulin resistance, similar to your diabetes, type 2 diabetes. And we'll be talking about it in implication doon. So, ang nangyayari, if there's hyperinsulinism, it also it disturbs the folliculogenesis. Same goes with increased LH, no? And leading to further androgen production, leading to the metabolic problems associated with it. And also yung acne, hirsutism, di ba? Yan yung mga nakikita natin with PCOS and irregular menses. So there is impaired negative feedback from the sex steroids and further GnRH pulsatility. So this is a diagnosis of exclusion. This is the last topic on my end. We have the last 20 minutes. This is a diagnosis of exclusion and other etiologies for irregular menses and hyperandrogenism should be excluded. Meaning, bago mo masabi na may PCOS yung patient, na-work up mo muna siya for other causes of irregular menses plus hyperandrogenism. So you should have worked up for hyperprolactinemia, hypothyroidism, and adrenal sources of hyperandrogenism such as your congenital adrenal hyperplasia, no, pwedeng tumors, yan, adrenal tumors. So prevalence of obesity is high in PCOS, and there is, because of the insulin resistance, no, and significantly increases the risk of comorbidities, including your metabolic syndrome. So sa metabolic syndrome, nandiyan ng hyperglycemia, di ba? Hypertension, dyslipidemia, and hypertension. So kasama din doon sa metabolic definition ng metabolic syndrome. I want you to read on it as well kasi it's very important, no? The metabolic syndrome is nandun din yung waist circumference ng patients natin. So failure of regular ovulation results in irregular menses and increased risk of endometrial hyperplasia and endometrial cancer because of the high LH. So 2 to 6-fold increase risk. I'm sure na-mention and you talked about PCOS and yung mga gynecologic implications or consequences of PCOS, but we will not be talking about it. We'll be talking more on the metabolic side. So this one, this is actually a good paper, local paper, na comparison of cardiometabolic parameters between different PCOS phenotypes among Filipino women in a tertiary hospital. So this was published in the Journal of ASEAN Federation of Endocrine Society. So they phenotype yung different PCOS phenotype in Filipino women. So there are 4 types of PCOS. So hindi lang siya ang most common actually na nakikita worldwide is your type A. So ito yung alam natin, di ba? Hyperandrogenism, sila yung may hirsutism, makakapal yung mga facial hairs nila or even the hairs in the arm area and even the underarms. May PCOS sila sa ultrasound and they have ovulatory dysfunction or irregular yung menses. Ang type B naman, there's presence of hyperandrogenism, may ovulatory dysfunction, pero normal ang ovaries. So tandaan nyo, sa PCOS, hindi requirement ang polycystic ovaries in the ultrasound. Pwedeng hirsute lang sila, irregular yung menses, they're still PCOS. So type B. Pag type C naman, may hyperandrogenism, may PCOS on ultrasound, pero regular ang menses. Again, hindi siya parang nakakahon na pwede kang PCOS, pero regular yung menses mo. Type D naman is the PCOS on ultrasound, may ovulatory dysfunction, pero no signs of hyperandrogenism. So, in Filipino women, they have seen that highest proportion is phenotype A. So, merong hirsute, may PCOS sa ultrasound, may ovulatory dysfunction. Clinical signs of hyperandrogenemia were highest in types A and B. High prevalence of obesity and central adiposity in Filipinos with PCOS. Kasi nga, actually, as a Filipino, we are really high risk to develop type 2 diabetes. So, pag may PCOS ka na, may central adiposity or obesity ka pa, talagang ang taas ng risk that you'll develop type 2 diabetes in the future. Tapos may family history ka pa, first-degree relatives. So the oligo and ovulatory phenotypes, the A, B, and D, they present with greater metabolic dysfunction. So I think this is more closely related to the high insulin resistance level, hyperandrogenism, and then the phenotype has the highest weight and BMI across the groups, and marker of central obesity, waist circumference, and waist to hip ratio were highest in phenotype A but also elevated in the oligoanovulatory phenotypes B and D. In short, as a Filipino, mere fact that you're Filipino, tapos you have a PCOS, tapos meron ka pang overweight or obesity, mataas talaga yung risk for development of metabolic syndrome. Kasi genetics-wise, yes, we are. Kasi hindi naman tayo, it's more of ano sa atin, visceral adiposity kasi sa atin. So organs, no, visceral adiposity. Kaya mas mataas ang develop chances of and number of patients with type 2 diabetes in our region. So, the treatment, no, we're down to the last few slides. For treatment for PCOS, if you're not at for example, the patient na may PCOS, not attempting to be pregnant, the most first line of treatment is combined hormonal contraceptives to regulate your menstrual cycle and decrease serum androgen by increasing your sex hormone binding globulin. Usually, in 3 months time kasi, nag-improve, nagle-lessen na yung serum androgen level ng patient. So, somehow um, those are the times that you would expect that the acne and hirsutism might improve. And kasi 'di ba tatanungin ng patients, "Doc, kailan ba namin makikita yung changes in terms of the acne, yung sa facial hair growth?" But it will take more than 3 months, pwede mo silang startan ng anti-androgens. So if inadequate yung response to hormonal contraceptives and their hypoandrogenic symptoms, meaning yung acne, hirsutism nila, you can give your spironolactone or flutamide can be considered. Kaya kung I'm not sure if you've encountered anyone na PCOS na naka-OCP sila, tapos meron din silang spironolactone. Ako meron, may patients ako na ganyan, no? Lalo na kung yung severe yung acne nila and yung hirsutism. So, pinamimaintain yung anti-androgen. You just have to advise them the common side effects of course, of spironolactone, no? And of these anti-androgens. So, lifestyle management should be recommended in all women with PCOS, and metformin should be considered for managing the cardiometabolic risk factors. Lifestyle management is still the first-line treatment prior to attempting pregnancy. So, diet, caloric deficit, weight loss, no, kailangan adequate yung weight reduction nila. So, the recommended is actually 7 to 10% para din makorek mo yung mga metabolic dysfunction associated with PCOS. Patients with PCOS who do get pregnant are highest risk to develop gestational hypertension, gestational diabetes, and preeclampsia. Kaya, preventive tayo. So, pag may PCOS yung patient ninyo at gusto nilang magbuntis, you tell them that they need to do these precautionary measures to lessen the risk of developing these complications during the pregnancy. So, yung metformin, it is only recommended if the patient has associated metabolic such as hyperglycemia or impaired fasting glucose or impaired glucose tolerance. You give it with your OCPs as an adjunct to your diet and exercise for obese women with PCOS or for treatment of diabetes or impaired glucose tolerance or even impaired fasting or pre-diabetes, no? So, metformin is relatively safe even for pregnant women. So, for example, ang concern kasi nung iba, they've been taking metformin for their PCOS and the diabetes, tas nabuntis sila. So, you can assure them, give them reassurance that it can be given even during pregnancy. Actually, ang management sa GDM, we also give metformin, no? Pwede siya, lalo na kung ayaw ng patient mag-insulin therapy. So for patients who want to get pregnant, ang ginagawa naman, they give letrozole and clomiphene citrate. This is an effective first line of treatment for ovulation induction. Okay? A clarification lang, ang metformin, hindi siya binibigay automatically for PCOS patient dahil PCOS, more of binibigay mo siya to treat the metabolic um, aspect of consequence of the or not consequence but yung mga to prevent not prevent actually but if they have pre-diabetes or diabetes, impaired fasting, impaired glucose tolerance plus the PCOS sila talaga yung mga binibigyan ng metformin. Pero dahil PCOS lang binigyan ng metformin, malamang investigate nyo, baka tumataas na rin talaga yung sugars nila. Okay? That's it. Thank you and good luck. Do you have any questions? I try to make it concise as possible kasi masyadong broad yung topic and overwhelming at the level of ano. So, yung mga must know lang, no? And given the constraint time period no constraints natin. If you don't have any more questions, kindly please fill up the evaluation sheet of Dr. Rosario and myself, no? And also the succeeding and previews, na lang po, tulong na lang po. And kasi we'll be using this for the meeting, yung annual meetings, no? Curriculum evaluation meetings based on your feedbacks. Okay, thank you. Would you recommend that we read our book or read additionally, lalo na kung hindi nyo masyadong additional reading of your Harrisons? Harrisons lang din naman yung ano ko, para may better understanding kayo, lalo na kung hindi klaro yung discussion sa inyo, lalo na yung sa osteoporosis. Very specific naman yung topics na nilagay ko eh. So, madali nyo mahanap kay Harrisons. So, book pa rin. I would highly recommend magbasa in conjunction with the lecture. Okay, thank you.